Hello, welcome to Pi Gotham 2021 talk, Python Typing Koans. I'm Kumar. I'm a software engineer based out of Bangalore. I work for this company called Airbase. Python Typing Koans. Python recently introduced gradual typing. The gradual typing means like some part of your source code can have type information and some part of the code can have no type information. And these type information are checked during static time, not during runtime. So this Python type annotations are optional. This project is an interactive way to learn the concepts in gradual typing, and most of the source code in this repository works from Python 3.8 plus onwards. The Git repository is organized into three sections, that is like Python examples, and then Django examples, and DRF examples. And now we will see a demo of this project in my local. I've cloned this repository in my local. And the entry point for project is Python CLI.py file. And let's see what all commands does this CLI.py file contain. So here I'm executing CLI.py command with the help option. CLI.py prints the three commands. That is, list command lists all the koans. All the koans here means all the examples in this repository. One is a command to run the type annotations or static type checker against a single file. Summary runs all the files in this repository and checks whether type informations are correct. If there are any errors, it reports. Now, let's try to list all the examples or crayons in this project. We'll use a list command. Now, what happens is like all the Python crayons in this directories are listed. As I said, there are three sections: Python, Django, and Django Rest Framework. Each file name consists of three parts. First part is the index number. Second part is the difficulty level, that is easy or medium. Third part is the concept, what you will learn when you try to solve all the riddles in this particular file. For example, let's take this file 110 EC class variable.py. The index number is 110. Difficulty level is GC, and the concept you will learn is class variable, how to annotate it. Let's open the same file in my text editor and see what does the file contain. Okay, so here is the 110 EC class variable.py. Let's see what does the source code contain. So the entry point for this file is main. The main function has got a data creator part, that is the for loop, and data retrieval part, that is user.getUser. Let's look into the for loop. For loop calls a function called getRandomUserData that returns the random user data. The same data is passed on to a factory function called create underscore user. And the created user is passed on to a class method add user. And the after that, we try to retrieve the user based on their name, and then we store that in a variable. Now let's try to go through the source code and see like the other code snippets. So there is a user data, and there is a get random function. Next, we have a user class, and we got a user's class variable, and underscore underscore init is initializer, and two methods, class methods, add user and get user, and there's a create user method. Now let's try to run this particular file against the type checker and check what all errors does this type checker say to us. So how do we run this file against the type checker? We can use the command one and the file name. So I'm using the koans 110 slash py 110 110 easy class variable.py. Now, what does static type checker? In this case, it's mypy. What does mypy say? Mypy complained there are 10 errors, and each error message contains a file name and a line number and the error message. So at line number 30, it says there's a missing type parameter for generic type list. That means you have declared a variable to be list, but we did not mention what type of data will be contained inside the list. And at line number 33, 41, and 46, and 40, 53, the function is missing a type annotation. That is, we have a class method or a instance method or a function that does not have any type annotation. Something similar to the similar, it says at line number 57, the return type annotation is missing. So what we will do right now, we'll open the source code and try to edit the files and see what type of errors it shows after editing the file when we run the MyPy static type checker. So let's start with from the beginning. It says user data. So user data is a dictionary where we have four keys: name, email, is active, and last seen. And the type is string, bool, and date time. So get random user data returns a dictionary with these four keys and the respective values. So we have type annotation for this function. We don't need to do anything. Let's go to the class. We have a user class with a class variable user. As the error message said, that list, it contains a list, right? Users is a list, but we don't have type information for the items in the list. So we know that this list is going to contain instance of user. So let's say the type as user. Next is initializer. So we know the type of the name is string from the user data, and email is also string from the user data. Is active is bool. Next is last seen. Last seen, we know it's datetime dot datetime. Now we have annotated this initializer. Now let's go to the next method. Next is add user class method. It takes in two arguments. First is class, second is a user instance. And interesting part is this add user does not return any value. So we can say that function returns none is the return value type. And the first argument class, we no need to annotate since a type checker knows it is the reference to the same class. Here, same thing. Now we know the name is a string and it can return a user or it can return none value. So let's be explicit, it returns none value. Now we need to say to the type checker that it can return possibly two values. First value is none and second value is the user. So this is a very special way to say when function can return a null or a particular instance. We call this as optional. Optional is not part of the standard library. It is part of the typing module. So what we'll do, we'll add or we'll import from the typing module optional. Let's go back to the get user. We know get user returns either none or user. So we annotated it properly. Now is the create user. So create user will always return a user. All right. Now we know what all these input arguments type. Name is string. Name is string. Email is string. Is active is boolean. Last seen is datetime. Right now we have annotated create user. Now we need to annotate the main function. Main function does not return any value, so we can say it as none. The rest of the part, the MyPy can infer the type. Let's go back and run the static type checker against this particular file. Let's clear and say run. Now the CLI.py invokes the MyPy static type checker and it runs this particular file against the MyPy static type checker. And as of now, what has happened is from 10 errors, we have gone to one error. Now this error we did not see previously. Let's try to see what is this error. So at line number 64, it says incompatible types in assignment. That is, expression has type optional of user, variable has type user. This is interesting. Let's go back to line number 64. So line number 64 is nothing but a class method looks into all the users and returns the user matching the first user matching the given name. So it says like at line number 64, the user variable can contain none or a user. Whereas we have already used this particular variable in line number 60, where this particular user variable will always contain the variable type to be user. Now MyPy is complaining that the type of this user variable has changed in the same scope. It is complaining that it should always receive a user instance. That is what it's complaining at line number 64. Since there is a mismatch in type, what we will do is we will rename this variable to something else, let's say like to Guido, and now let's go and run this particular file against the type checker and see are we seeing the same error or not. Now that we are running the same file against the MyPy checker, MyPy static type checker, we should not see any error message. I think this program looks like slow because I'm recording the video and I'm doing it. So right now, as I said, there are no errors in the Koan file 110 EC class variable.py. Um, let's see, like, what did we learn in this particular Koan file? So first, we figured out how to annotate a class variable. Now, how to annotate a class method, how to annotate arguments of a function, how to change the variable when the types, when you reuse a variable, what happens when you try to rename a variable or use a different variable name. All right, so this is a very small example. Like this, there's 20 such examples in this repository. So each one of them is classified based on concepts like this. So while solving the problems, you understand a very core concept of this gradual typing. As I said you earlier, there are like files which are categorized based on. Okay, I gave a wrong argument to list. It should be list. As I said earlier, you can see the files which are categorized into three different categories, and each one of them you will learn one particular concept. So you can learn more concepts in Python, Django, how to add a type annotation to views, models, aggregate methods, and the model managers. Let's go back to slides. I think and that's the end of my presentation. Please check out my repository and let me know what you think. And in case you like to contact me, this is my contact details. Thank you.